you're going down the nursing route, then hopefully there'll be something in it for you. Example two, I can't see how this is possibly example two, but I mean, we're on like the fifth example, but whatever. The median. So the process is cancel frequencies associated with the lowest value and in the set with the highest until you have one or two values left over, and then those will correspond to the actual values that make up the median. I'm going to show you what you'd have to do if you didn't use the technique that's outlined there, because we actually addressed this concept last class. We talked about putting the numbers in order, counting to the middle. Right? But this is in a frequency table, so the numbers are definitely in order, but they're not presented the way they were last time. What I would have to do is write the number 1 10 times, the number 2 3 times, the number 3 once, the number 4 8 times, and then the number 5 5 times. Now, if I'm using the technique from last class, I just got to double check because I forget often. What I would do is cancel the lowest value with the highest value until I get to the middle. So I can do that. So 1 with a 1, 1 with a 5, 1 with a 5, and so on. But really, I could do all five of the 5s with 5 of the 1s, because that's going to happen anyway, right? So I can really just kind of take this chunk and cancel it with this chunk, or you can do it one at a time. Then I can cancel a 1 with a 4, a 1 with a 4, but in reality I'm going to cancel all 5 of the 1s with 5 of the 4s. Then cancel a 2 with a 4, but in reality that's the same as saying let's get rid of all the 2s with all the 4s because there's an equal quantity. And I'll be left with a 3 in the middle. All right, so 3 is the median. So the median is 3. Because that would be the middle number if you put the values in increasing order. However, you could see a pretty significant flaw with this approach. If you had hundreds of values in the frequency column, then you're not going to list all these things out. So you want to work with it within the table rather than actually listing each item out based on its frequency. That's just terrible. All right. So what we can do is follow the process, cancel frequencies associated with the lowest and highest value. So here I have 5 5s. I can cancel all 5 of these 5s with 5 of the 10 1s, which would leave me with 5 1s. Right? That's what I did when I listed them all out. I canceled 5 5s with 5 1s. I'm just doing it in table format. I can cancel all 5 of these 1s with 5 of the 8 4s. And that'll leave me with 3 of the 4s. I have 3 2s left over and 3 4s left over. 2 is the low number, 4 is the high number, so I can cancel those all together. And I'll have 1 as a result. Now that 1 is a frequency. That's not an actual number. The frequency tells us how often a particular value occurs. So what that's telling me is that I have one number left over. That number is a 3, therefore the median is a 3. So we're doing exactly what we did in the list approach, except we're just working within the table. But fortunately, you're never going to have to do that because I'm going to show you how to do it on a calculator in a minute. If for nothing else, you can at least take this by hand approach as motivation to learn how to do it on a calculator. You know, I like it to present it so that you get an underlying understanding of how things work. But a lot of people walk away being like, okay, so I'll never have to do this? All right, cool. All right, show us the calculator. So, The one thing the calculator does not easily compute for you, meaning when I say it doesn't easily do it, it doesn't just, there isn't a button for it. You know, like you can't just say mode, enter, answer, right? So there is a workaround that'll help us figure out what the mode is of a data set, but it's more troublesome than it's worth, because while I've been talking, you've already decided that the mode is 1. And that's because 1 occurs 10 times. Everything else occurs less than that. Right? So there's no easy way to do it on the calculator, but you're probably thinking, well, I don't need to do it on the calculator, so what does it matter? Good point.
The fastest way to do it will be with it on the inside the table.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, just by identifying what the largest frequency is, and then the number that goes along with that.
Because I took the test for the nursing entrance exam. It was like 10 questions on that.
Oh, really?
That was before I took the test, right?
Gotcha. And do they allow graphing calculators?
No.
No, it's all by hand. Oh, so it's a good thing we're going over how to do this. Yeah, the table approach is the best. So even if you have a raw list of data, I recommend putting it in the table form and then doing all this stuff, just because it makes life easier. Right. But we'll get more practice with this as we go. But let's actually learn how to do it on the calculator. So at a minimum, you can practice your work, practice the skills, so you can check your work. I have I think I have 2 extras. Oh, I only have, no, I have 2 extras. So, fair enough. Packets. That's the one. Okay, so for those of you who don't have experience with this calculator, I'll just start by saying it's not intuitive. Right? So you definitely want to write down steps, processes, things like that, little reminders to yourself of how to get to certain places, because I mean, the first red flag I thought when I first saw this calculator was that there's a math button. Like, it's a calculator. The whole thing's a math button. Why do we need a separate math button?
Are you recording?
I believe so.
I thought I saw you.
No, I am. I check it periodically to make sure. No problem. All right. So, but one good thing is that it's a stat course, so odds are at some point we're going to end up in the stat menu. So this is that time. So for people who are just turning their calculator on for the first time, you can activate it utilizing the on button, of course. But what you might not know is that you turn it off also by using the on button. You hit second on. All right. That's important because if you forget to turn your calculator off, I didn't hit the actual on. If you forget to turn your I can't turn it off. It's an emulator. Your battery's going to drain. Eventually, it'll time out and shut itself off. So what people will do is they'll just leave it on, put the cover on, throw it in their bag, and just rely on the laws of nature to work itself out. The problem is it's going to die, and you know when it's going to die. Right in the middle of a test, yeah. So that's just how it works, right? With the new fancy ones, the color screen, the rechargeable ones, when they die, you lose all your programs. So if you've installed any programs, which we will do before the course is over, they get wiped out completely. So turning your calculator off is actually very important. All right, so make it a habit. All right, anyway, so you've discovered how to turn your calculator on. So now let's get into the stat menu. So hit the stat key. Let me go key press history, just so you can see what I'm doing. I don't think I need it that big. I guess it's all right. So you're hitting the stat key. Now you're going to select Edit. So either number 1 or Enter to get into the Edit menu. So it brings you into basically a cheapo version of an Excel spreadsheet. Right? So L1, L2, L3, those are columns that would be in a spreadsheet. So we're going to treat this like a spreadsheet. We're going to enter the information that was in the first column of our table into L1. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Oh, good question. So let me put some stuff in there, and I'll show you how to get the stuff out of there. So I have some stuff in there, and I need to get it out. What we're going to do is go right up to the column heading, L1, right on top of it. Get the cursor right on that L1, hit Clear, and then Enter, and it'll wipe out the entire column. All right, delete is your worst enemy when it comes to the stat editor. All right, bad things happen if you hit the delete key. When you do that, let me know, and I'll help you. I would go over it right now, but it's not relevant to everybody. So what I've discovered in the past is people just don't listen until they find out that they have that problem. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in L1, 10, 3, 1, 8, and 5. So enter after everything. To get from one column to the other, you hit the right arrow or the left arrow. To go back, obviously, to go up and down in the column, you hit the up and down arrow. All right, so all our information is in. Now I want the calculator to tell me what the mean and median are. It's not going to tell me the mode. All right, we're out of luck with that. So I'm going to quit out of here. So I'm going to hit second mode. Again, not intuitive. Second, followed by the mode key. It actually makes sense why they hide the quit key as a second key, because they don't want you accidentally tripping over it. You know, you're in the middle of something, you accidentally hit quit and lose everything. So you kind of have to look for it, and that's fine. So now, this is where different versions of calculators come into play. Hit the stat key, again, not intuitive. So stat. Go over to calc. So the right arrow to calc, which stands for calculate. It's a calculator. What else would it do? I don't know. Option 1 is 1 bar stats. Stands for 1 variable statistics. So select that one. And if you have this kind of calculator, so basically, I mean, you have nothing to worry about if when you hit 1 bar stats, you get this display. You have slight adjustment to make if you have a different display. If when you selected 1 bar stats, you got this. Then I'll help you out in a minute. This is the TI-83 interface. Okay. This is what shows up if you have a TI-83 or a TI-84 with the old software. All right. So if you have a TI-84 and this does not come up, see me at the end of class and I'll upgrade you. right? So I have a wire that that'll upgrade your operating system on your TI-84. Only the TI-84. TI-83 I can't do anything about. TI-84, right? So L1 is the default for list one, for the first list. Now, if it's not there, so I'm just going to say that it's not there. I have nothing in there. If I want to put L1, I'm going to hit second followed by 1. You can see above 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It says L1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right? So second 1 brings up L1. You don't want to go trying to build an L1 yourself, because above the parentheses, you can see that there's an L. I've had this before where people are like, my calculator's broken. I can't get it to produce the right answer. And I'm like, that's because you found an L and then put the number 1 after it. No, I want L1, right? List 1. Then go down to frequency list. Our frequency list, we put it into L2. So second 2. And then go down to calculate. So this is what it should look like in your display. Hit calculate, and then it gives you all this stuff. Look at that. So we said the median was 3. Now you'll notice in this display, it doesn't say median, but it does have a little down arrow. That down arrow means that if I hit the down arrow, there's more stuff. So keep hitting the down arrow. You can see among all the information that they presented was the median, and that happened to be a 3. Going back to the top, we had X bar. That was exactly the decimal we came up with. We rounded it, but that was what it was before it rounded. So we're good there. So this actually gave us way more than what we needed, but you'll find that most of the time we need all this information, or most of this information anyway. Now, if you're on a TI-83, you hit StatCalc 1, it brought this up in your home screen. What you want to do is type in L1, comma, L2. All right, so second 1, comma is a comma. There's a comma key right above the 7. It's its own key, that's how important it is. And then second 2, and then close parentheses. Okay. So right now, there's always somebody. Right now, somebody's thinking, forget that, I'll just do it by hand. You say that, but then I give you on a test a data set that's got hundreds of values and they're all decimals. You're really going to do it by hand? I mean, by all means, give it your best shot. You're not going to finish the test. All right, you're going to do it on the calculator. There's going to be other situations in the course where you're not even going to have the choice. You will be physically incapable of doing it by hand. Whatever work I ask you to do, it is not something that you will be able to do by hand. The only way to do it would be on the calculator. So you need to fall in love with this thing as quickly as possible. All right. You don't have to move in with it, but you got to fall in love with it. So anyway, a lot of stuff here. Let me just talk about what some of these things are. The X bar we already know. Summation symbol, that just means you're adding things, right? The sum of X, that means that I just added all my X values. All right, so the X values, like the 1 occurred 10 times, this is better down here, 1 occurred 10 times, 2 occurred 3 times, and 3 occurred once, and so on. If I added all of these numbers here, the ones that I listed out, it would give me a total of 76. All right. Sum of X squared is what I would get if I actually raised each of these numbers to the second power and then added them together. There's a time and a place for that. It's just we're not there yet. S stands for sample standard deviation. We're going to talk about that in a little while. Sigma, the lowercase sigma, is population standard deviation. N is the number of values in a data set. I use that as kind of like a little self-checking mechanism because most of the time a question will say 15 surgeons were selected at random and the length of time in which it took them to perform a routine operation was recorded. Right? So I know that I'm looking for 15 data points. so that when I run my calculations, if n is anything other than 15, I know I typed the data in wrong. All right, so hit the down arrow all the way to the bottom, and you get this stuff here. This stuff is great. I'm actually going to snip that and pop it in. All right, we actually talked about these last class. The minimum and the maximum, those I think should be obvious, but just in case they're not, minimum is the lowest number, max is the highest. So if I needed something like the range, which is the difference between the max and the min, the highest minus the lowest, I can easily figure that out and know the range is 4 now. If I needed the mid-range, which is the average of these two numbers, I could figure it out from here. All right. This guy here, the Q1, is my lower quartile. And Q3 is the upper quartile. When we were talking about outliers last class, we talked about something called the interquartile range, the IQR. In this case, based on this notation, it would be Q3 minus Q1. All right, so that work that I had to do in order to figure out the interquartile range, you know, counting to the middle, then finding a median again, and then finding a median a third time, I don't have to do that. This did it all for me. Later on, I'll show you an even easier way to come up with this information. It'll be kind of a one-stop shopping. And also, I'll show you how to write a program today. I reached for a calculator, but I don't have it. I don't think I have it stored in any of the calculators I loaned out. So the folks that borrowed those, if you could actually follow along when I do it, that'd be great. So I'll have it. Right, but it'll be pretty cool because then you'll have a program that'll compute the interval of outliers for you so that you can make a determination of whether a number is an outlier, right, numerically. All right. So one-stop shopping. But then I immediately throw a curveball. You look at the example that follows. It says, find the mean, median, mode of the following data set, and you look at the classes, the x values, and it's like, well, those aren't subtraction problems. And if I try to put a dash in my calculator, if I do 10 dash 19, the calculator is going to be like, you're not fooling me. That's a minus sign, and I'm just going to put negative 9 there. Right? So this is an interval. So what we want to do is we want to come up with the middle value in that interval so that we can use the calculator. Whenever you have frequency tables organized in interval fashion, the best you can come up with for a mean is an estimate. So that's fine. The class midpoint is the average of the two endpoints. So the example there, so 10 to 19 becomes 10 plus 19 over 2. So it's 29 over 2, which is 14 and a half. And you would do the same for each one. It's a 10 wide interval, 10 unit wide interval, which means that every consecutive value going from top to bottom should be separated by 10 units. So once you figure out the first one, just keep adding 10 and you'll get all the remaining ones. Or you could average 20 plus 29 is 49 divided by 2 is going to be 24 and a half. So 24 and a half, 34 and a half, 44 and a half. All right. So back to the calculator. If you didn't get it the first time around, don't worry. We'll be doing this many, many times before the course is over. This process. It's kind of the bread and butter. So stat, edit. All right. So if before clearing out data wasn't relevant to you, so and that was the case for many of us, so you didn't pay attention to how to do it. Now it's relevant to everyone, so let's all pay attention. Up arrow, get onto L2, hit clear, then enter. Then go on to the column heading for L1. So right on that L1, hit clear and enter. Delete is not the value, not the button to use. All right, so 14 and a half, 15 and a half, 15 and a half. Jeez Louise. Was it Saturday morning or something? 34 and a half. And so on. Need like a good brunch. I just think it like this is like prime breakfast time, and I just thought about that crappy sausage, egg, and cheese croissant I had from Dunkin' Donuts. They forgot the cheese, so it's even crappier. All I want is just like something decent. Maybe I'll hit up the Benjamin Steakhouse brunch tomorrow. Solid move. It's reasonably priced, and they do have steak on the menu. So can't go wrong. So anyway, we have all these entries in. Double check. That's your quality control. I mean, if there was some way that I could allow this legally, you know, in such a way that people wouldn't cheat, I would say during a test, put your data in, hand it to the person next to you, have them just double check that you typed the data in correctly, and then give it back to you, because sometimes you do need a second set of eyes. Unfortunately, during a test, that would be cheating, so you can't do that. So the best you can do is try to quality control yourself, because I'm telling you, you can do all this on the calculator. So what happens when you screw it up? You get everything wrong related to that question. And I have to somehow figure out where you went wrong. If it's obvious to me that it was a calculator misstep, then I can go easy on the points. But if it's not, then I gotta hit you hard, and that's not fun. All right. The way I check is to check it using a method other than the way I typed it in. So I typed it in column by column, so I'll check it row by row. It's not foolproof, but something other that, you know, it's kind of giving a different perspective. Maybe that'll help, maybe it won't. I hope it does. So second mode, quit you out of there. Stat, calc, option 1. It holds on to the previous settings. That's great news, because we're going to be working with these settings very frequently. So I can go right on down to calculate. All right, so I have the mean, which is 38, we're going 38.511. Then I need the median, so scroll down for that, 54.5. MED is an acceptable abbreviation for median. Capital M also is an acceptable abbreviation for median, because my capital M's tend to look like lowercase m's, and that's not an acceptable abbreviation. So you can make a nice sharp looking capital M, then you're good to go. The mode, it's actually going to be an interval, and that's going to be the 50 to 59. And that's because that is the interval that contains the most values. All right. I don't know that any particular value in the 50 to 59 range is actually the mode. It's possible that there are, let's say, 10 50s, 10 51s, 10 52s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, and then 12 58s, for example, getting me to 92 values. But then there are 51 11s, 51 values in that 10 to 19 range that are all one number. So I can't pin down what the actual mode is, but I do know that the interval that contains the most values is the 50 to 59 interval, and that's the best I can do here.